Hey guys, itaewon Sammy, King of Gangnam Sammy, coming back to you live on a Thursday morning. It is a cool day. November 18, I think it is. November 18, yeah. So we're coming up on the last week of good fall weather. The weather forecast for next week looks like minus weather at night. Oh, it's going to be a chilly winter this year. My last winter in Korea. As most of you know, who are following my channel, I'm retiring, heading off to the sunny climes of Sri Lanka, where I'm a citizen. Hang up my shingle. I'm going to still work. I'm going to do some remote work for the company that I work for here, managing HR and content development. But anyway, I want to thank all of my new followers, new subscribers. Thank you very much for commenting. I'm getting tons of comments. I really appreciate it. And I will take the time to comment or reply to every comment that I get. Okay, so please do comment. If you like what I'm doing, let me know what it is that you like. What do you want to hear about? What do you want to know about? And if you don't like what I'm doing, let me know why so I can get better. Because your likes, your shares, your comments, and your subscriptions helps me do a better job. I mean, I'm doing this for fun, for myself, but in the end, it is a public forum. So if I can help you, then I'll do that. Anyway, today I'm talking about horror stories. Horror stories when it comes to renting. As you can see, I'm walking around Gangnam. And these are what we call villas. They are multi-story apartments, usually about 3 or 4 floors, no elevator, walk-ups. This is a residential area in Gangnam, 10 minutes from subway stations in a prestigious neighborhood, Yeoksam. It's a mix, office and housing. So, this is housing. So, we've got big apartments. Right. Is that an apartment? No, that's an office building. Sorry. That's an office building. But you have a mix of new and old. Modern and maybe a little older. And there's tons of videos out there about how the renting system works here. But basically, it's the same as any country. You find a real estate agent, you put down your deposit, you pay your monthly rent, and away you go. I'm not going to get heavy into the rental system here because there's tons of videos out there. I'm going to talk about some of the horror stories after you rent. So, some of the experiences I've had pretty good experiences. I've been here 13 years. I've lived in 1, 2, 3, 4. This is my 5th apartment in 13 years. My first apartment, I was there for 2 years. The landlord was okay, and the place was big, cheap, but had bugs. Especially in crowded, dense areas such as this. So you can see you have a new apartment, and then over here, this brick place is older. And you can tell it's older because of the bricks. These bricks were usually the bricks used in houses built in the 60s. So much older. So they have bug problems. Especially in Itaewon, one of the most bug-infested areas in Seoul. Had a lot of bugs. I kept the place clean, but I had to spray. So I left after 2 years. And I went to another place, which was also nice. A little small, but the landlord was great. Great view, great location. Could have been better, but I was there 8 years. 7 or 8 years. I can't remember. The landlord was great. Then I moved to a bigger place, which a lot of you have seen. My place was great, huge, cheap, but the landlord was crazy. They were hoarders and just insane, like just constantly causing grief. Wanted me to give up my parking spot and didn't want to give me anything in return. They said I should be a good neighbor. I said you should be a good landlord. So they wanted me to give up my parking spot because I only had a motorcycle. And the other tenant had bought, sorry about that, I keep pushing with my finger the button. So I had a motorcycle, I had 2 motorcycles. And the other tenant had bought a van, and they wanted me to give up my parking spot to park it outside. There's ample space for me to park it outside, but I wasn't happy with the landlord at that time. So I said no. And I told the tenant, I said, listen, I'm sorry, but if they took out half the garbage that's in the garage, it's a 4-car garage, only 2 cars could park there because of the garbage they had in there. If they took out half the garbage, you could pull your car all the way in. I could park my motorcycle on that little space on the side. And he goes, yeah, I know. I don't worry about it. They work for one of the embassies, so it's not like they paid for anything. They got parking at a local parking lot. So that was one of the issues. And they were hoarders. There was a lot of garbage. No bugs per se, but they were crazy. The building was old. It leaked. Mold is a big issue in Korea. Huge issue. And you got to keep watch on that. Luckily, I didn't have any mold in the first 3 places. Little bit. Tiny little bit. I was always above ground, so it wasn't that much of an issue. Up high. And, but there was a electrical problem. The electricity kept going out because the box was 20 years old and never got tested. The heat went out at Christmas because the heater that they installed was installed wrong. And they couldn't fix it over Christmas. So I was without heat for like 3 or 4 days over the holidays. No compensation. And then, what was the other one? Then I moved up to the top of Namsan, which was the best place I've ever lived in. Luxury condo, overlooking the city. Beautiful place, huge patio. I rented it specifically for the patio. But the landlady was, how do I put it? Nosy and a busybody. I specifically stated that I'm going to use the patio. It was even in the lease agreement. Specifically, that I'm responsible for anything that goes on top of the patio because I'm going to be using it. I have a few barbecue parties, etc., and she's constantly complaining. When I initially applied, she said no pets, and I had 2 cats at that time. And then I find out that, well, eventually she said it's okay with the cats. When she met me, I find out that she's feeding a stray cat and letting it shit all over the place. And the smell is disgusting. So, you know, just... Ugh. Then I find out that I can't flush toilet paper down the toilet because she has remodeled this apartment and split it. So now there's too many toilets for the piping. So can't put that down the toilet. And can't pour water down the sink too much because it floods. Because again, the piping is too small. Huge crack in the roof, causing huge mold problems in one of the spare rooms. And she blamed open window. And I'm saying, no, look, that can't come from the window. But she was like, it's okay. So I moved out of there after a year. And she ripped me off on the deposit. I'm not going to go into it. But the horror stories that I hear are landlords trying to keep the deposit. Now here the deposit is quite large, and you'll read about that later or hear about that later. You have to put down a huge amount, $5,000, $10,000 as a deposit. And they will try to stick you with that. Defects in the house, trying to get things fixed, which are integral to the house. Now, the problem isn't most times is the landlord, is the stress of trying to go through an interpreter or the real estate agent. Because the real estate agent is responsible. Because you pay them a fee when you sign the contract, and they are responsible to manage. They're like the building manager. So they're responsible legally. They have to get the landlord to be in compliance with the rules. Now, especially with foreigners, it's difficult for us to navigate the regulatory system in Korea because we don't speak the language, we don't know who to call. So you rely on the landlord to take care of all of this stuff for you. Or the real estate agent when there's a problem. How many times I had to call my real estate agent with the last place. But this place that I'm living in now, really nice, really cool. It is a basement. Well, no, not really. It's a back split. So like you see here, it's a hill, right? So the front of my house I would have to walk down 3 steps, but the back of my house, and if you see my video, I'm on the 2nd floor. I'm overlooking the parking of the next door apartment. I'm on the 2nd floor. So very interesting apartment, but it's great. It's cheap. It's easy. The landlord is amazing. Speaks English. She lives in the building on the top floor. I live downstairs. Her and her husband both speak English. Their children live nearby. The 2 sons, they're both studied in Canada, and the grandchildren are being taught by my company. Private tutoring. So there's a relationship there. So that's really cool. Anyway, some of the other horror stories, let's get back to that. Let me finish up that story. Mold. Like after they move in, the landlord has replaced the wallpaper. It turns out they just covered over the mold. They cleaned it and just covered it up. And you wake up one day and you've got respiratory problems, and you discover that it's because of mold. Because again, you come to this country first time and you rent an apartment and you don't realize that mold is a problem. Electrical problems, sewage problems, water problems, because the city is very, very old. So the infrastructure is old in certain parts of the city. And as I said, it is have a bug infestation problem because it is so old and so densely packed. I mean, just look at how tight everything is, right? Like in any city. Landlord's not doing that. The other problem that happens is you only have 2 years, 1 year or 2 years. And the landlord can raise the rent. Now there is rules around it, but most times what happens is if you don't want to pay the raise in rent, over what they want, they say, okay, well, my son is moving in, you have to leave. That's the only way they can get you out. And the son will move in, but then the son will move out and they'll re-rent it. The other thing that happens is the building is sold, and the new landlord raises the rent or tries to evict you. Can't happen, but again, who are you going to call? Right? Who are you going to call? Like, are you really going to fight it? Right? Because if you're a teacher here or a foreigner here, you don't have time. You've got to work, you got to do this stuff. It sucks. Now, if you are working for a school, they provide you with housing. It's not always the best. It's absolutely not always the best. And I just read online one of person who lived 10 minutes from their work in a school provided housing, but now are being told they have to move over an hour away. And they don't like that because now it's increased cost for them because they got to pay to travel, and 1 hour on either end. So that can happen, and that's legal. Unfortunately, the school provides it. It's not contractual, it's civil. So they can provide it anyway, unless it's in your contract that the housing has to be within a certain kilometer or time distance. The final thing is, yeah, like I said, the landlord will sell the building or the apartment, and the new landlord will try to evict you. I've had one time, I've heard this happen like once or twice, and it happened to somebody I know. I saw it happen. He wakes up one morning and there's huge noise outside his apartment. He goes out to investigate, and there's a construction crew coming to tear down the apartment. And he goes, "What the hell are you doing?" I go, "We're coming here to tear down the apartment." He spoke Korean. He says, "I live here." He says, "We're tearing down the apartment. I don't know what to tell you." Calls the landlord. Landlord doesn't answer. Calls the real estate agent. Real estate agent doesn't know what's going on. He tells the construction crew, "I'm living here. I got my wife and kids. What are you going to do? Tear down the house around them?" They're like, "We don't know what to do." They call the police. They call it. Finally, days go by and they finally get a hold of the landlord. He had sold the place. Now they got to find a new... He packed up and left. He had no choice. Police said, "Listen, just go. It's a civil case. It's not criminal. You got to sue him." Which is true. So I'm going to do a series next month on how to avoid the pitfalls of renting in Korea, how to survive renting in Korea, and how to be successful in renting in Korea. So until then, I really want to thank everyone for watching, liking, commenting, sharing. Please be safe. Please be healthy. Wear a mask. Get vaccinated. itaewon Sammy, King of Gangnam, Gangnam Sammy. I'm out.